Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. And I want to take a second to thank you all for tuning in here today and for helping us set a record-breaking day over at the National Pulse website. Yesterday, over 1 million visits, views to the nationalpulse.com yesterday. I guess because of all the news we break and all the investigations that take place. Natalie Winters and the whole team, everybody that helps out with the site, Wahagan, and all of our private Discord chat channel members who are basically a big investigative team at the moment. If you want to join up to that, by the way, the URL is thenationalpulse.com/support, or you can go to the website there. You see a little icon up there that says support us. Click there and you can be part of the team. I also want to thank our viewers from The Donald.win. That is the new The Donald, which used to be an incredibly famous Reddit channel. Of course, they got banned and kicked off there, as we are routinely kicked off everything. Just before going live today, I got a blank email from Twitter that said, there's been a development in your appeal against the National Pulse being banned on Twitter. And it was just a blank email, so I'm going to try and figure out what happened there. I think they're just teasing me at this point, but I'll let you know if we get anywhere with Twitter. I want to say a great big thank you to other platforms that have gone out of their way to make sure they host us and provide us access, like Parler, like Rumble. For instance, we are on Rumble if you want to subscribe there as well. Every little helps. There's a lot of news, of course, and if you were watching the War Room from this morning, you'll know that we were covering an awful lot. We were up early this morning going through so much of what's been taking place. But over the course of this show, I want to bring in Patrick Basham from the Democracy Institute, and we're also going to be answering audience questions. I will be, for the final 4 blocks of this show, the final 32 minutes, am I doing my mathematics right? 32 minutes of this show, be answering your questions that you have posed to us in the Donald.win. So stick around, stay tuned. We're going to be getting to those, and there are some great questions, some very thought-provoking questions, very difficult questions, and we're not going to shy away from those. We put the list together of as many as we can possibly answer in this hour, so we'll get to those in just a moment. Patrick Basham joins us down the line. Now, Patrick is the founding director of the Democracy Institute, one of the only, if not the only, pollster to get 2016 bang on the money. And Patrick has written this excellent article about why we should be skeptical about the results now in 2020. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Raheem. Absolute pleasure to be with you again.
So, I mean, let's start off where the media always starts off. You're a conspiracy theorist. Biden won, you're a conspiracy theorist, you've got no cause here, you have no standing, you're grifting, you're telling the audience what they want to hear, just to come on this program and earn all the thousands of dollars that we pay you. Oh wait, we don't. You do this all of your own volition, all of your own time, and you stake your reputation on it. In 2016, you proved your credentials. Are you actively trying to lose them now?
No, I'm actually, if anything, trying to reinforce them, because if you're in the think tank business, or actually if you're in the polling business, and we're in both, your mission, one hopes, one tries every day, is to speak truth to power, right? So that you have to tell, whether it's someone sponsoring a poll or whether it's a conclusion to a piece of research, you're trying to tell your audience what you think the best evidence demonstrates, whether that is a conclusion that fits with their worldview or their hopes and dreams, or whether it dashes them. That is how one builds one's reputation in research terms or in polling terms. And so that is what we continue to do. And so what I thought would be helpful, perhaps, with doing this article, was to look at what was available in terms of the quasi-official results, in terms of the non-polling metrics that have been out there in recent years, in fact, in recent decades, that have been very predictive of who would win a presidential election in America, and also at what we know so far about the accumulation, the tabulation, counting of ballots. And going through those 3 approaches, using those 3 instruments, in each and every case, what I find is that there are innumerable questions which are simply unanswered. I mean, we can guess at, presume what those answers may be, but no satisfactory answers have been provided as to how legally above board we have the, in inverted commas, result that the media has declared for Joe Biden.
So we put your article on screen there just a second ago. I want to make sure that we get it up. It's people, this audience has especially heard me railing against The Spectator magazine. But hey, a broken clock is right twice a day. And they do get some great contributions from people like yourself. Patrick, we would prefer at thenationalpulse.com if you would come to us as well. But we can hope to get some articles out of you in the future as well, Patrick, because this one was especially well written. It was especially to the point. It was detailed, and look, The Spectator comes with a masthead that has a lot of serious history attached to it. They talk about The Spectator magazine in old television shows about how august it is and who's writing for it and all of this. So you're not writing, a little blog post on some third-rate conservative blog somewhere where the media can turn around and say to you, well, this is stupid, this doesn't count, you're obviously just a flailing nutcase. It comes with the august masthead here of The Spectator magazine. Now, the audience can think about that what they will, but at least from the establishment media's perspective, that's very important. And the fact that the Spectator's editors would allow you to publish something like this is very important to the case you raise here. Well, look, we got to go up against a hard break here, Patrick. So we're going to bring you back shortly after. I want to get some more details out of you as to where you think this goes from here on, because we're constantly being told, "Hey, forget about it. Kaylee's tone is so concessionary. Give it up." We'll ask you those questions after the break. All right, welcome back to the show. In just a few moments, we'll be getting to your questions from the Donald.win, and some very good ones there are too. A great community over there, I think recently called white supremacists and cyber criminals by the establishment media. That's how you know you're in good company, by the way, unless you're getting called all sorts of names and pejoratives, as I get called from all sorts of people. And that was, I think, one of the comments in the Donald.win as I was going through some of the questions. It said, hey, how do we know Raheem's good? They call him all sorts of names. And Patrick Basham is the director of the Democracy Institute. Patrick, they're going to call you all sorts of names as well for raising questions about the legitimacy of this election. I want to get into a bit of detail here, and you just tell me, I don't know, you can say I don't know if the answer is I don't know, because there aren't a whole lot of hyper-specifics that are being covered in the establishment media. But I go through these statistical analyses from some of the world's best mathematicians and world's best stats buffs. I've learned so much in the last couple of weeks about different curves and different expectations and different mathematical trends and all of this stuff. So when you went through your piece, how much of that for your article, how much of that did you have to study? How much of this do you think makes a difference? And if it was so easily, and by the way, feel free to jump in at any time, if it was so easily, I'm just going to rant, so easily disproven, why doesn't Jake Tapper, why doesn't Brian Stelter, why don't they dedicate an entire show to it and say, okay, here, look, this mathematical thing doesn't make sense because of these reasons. This argument in Patrick Basham's article doesn't make sense because of these reasons. They don't address it. Why?
They don't address it, I think, for the larger reason, or they fit into a larger point, which is that close to 100% of the folks who publicly have pronounced over the past several weeks that there is zero evidence of fraud, in almost all cases, maybe all cases, haven't actually either had the desire or the opportunity to look at the quote-unquote evidence, whereas a large majority of those who have, either from a distance or up close, are convinced that there is fraud, whether they may differ on whether it's enough to overturn the election in any given state or nationally, etc. But it is quite striking how those closest to the material are the ones most convinced that there is a problem here that needs to be investigated fully. Yes, in answer to your earlier question, I did have to delve quite deep into a lot of the statistical and mathematical stuff here. And what we have is we have not simply one statistical anomaly or one polling anomaly, result anomaly. We have them all over the place, all in and around these key states. And it is just beyond puzzling. You see, one could have argued, because of the pandemic, because of Donald Trump, that this was going to be an unusual election with an unexpected outcome. Was that possible? Of course. Some people even thought it was probable. And you could say that this Biden's quote-unquote victory was that unexpected outcome, except for the key point that the foundations of that unexpected victory are not consistent. These anomalies, if it is an unusual election, the trends to Biden, the spikes to Biden should be all over the place. They shouldn't only be in these critical swing precincts and counties, in these critical cities, in these critical swing states. They should happen in other comparable cities, comparable counties, neighboring precincts and counties and states. We should see these trends. They wouldn't be identical, but they would cross states that always trend in the same direction, sort of as a group within their peers. There's none of this. None of that happened. Right. So it is so unusual, so incredibly unusual. It has to be suspect. That doesn't guarantee corruption, but it does guarantee that something very strange has occurred. And at a minimum, everyone should want to know exactly what happened. So again, at a further minimum, it does not happen again.
Patrick, you just put it in that one thing. We're going to clip that and make sure that goes and replays everywhere, because in that one segment, you explain more succinctly than I've heard probably anywhere else why this is suspect. It's a spike in very few precincts, by the way, that came in at weird times of the night, when certain people were out of the room because a fire alarm was pulled or a drain pipe burst, and it's incredible
That's right.
it boggles the mind. It's utterly baffling that you wouldn't get somebody at CNN or somebody. And by the way, we're getting new breaking news out of James O'Keefe from Project Veritas in this hour about what we're seeing more from the CNN editorial calls and how they've put their fingers on the scales by refusing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop. We'll bring you those clips, I think, over the course of the show if we can. But Patrick, that was incredibly well put and incredibly succinct. So let me ask you this. Your article was 5 days ago. 5 days is a long time in politics. 5 days is an especially long time in, as you say, an incredibly anomalous, what seems to be anomalous election. So what's changed in that 5 days, and where do you foresee us going in the next 5 days? What are you focusing on at the Democracy Institute? We've got about 2 minutes left here.
The evidence is piling up day by day. We have new lawsuits. We have the whistleblowers with the Virginia event yesterday. And what we know from that example, and there are others, is that there are greater and greater grounds, more and more reasonable reasons, rational reasons to investigate this fully. And there's a couple of reasons why this has to happen. It has to happen so that the Trump campaign and Trump voters know that whatever the outcome, it was legitimate. As Americans, everyone needs to know, as a voter, as a taxpayer, that it was legitimate. But it's also important for Joe Biden's presidency, should he have one. Because if this isn't sorted out, at least half the country will consider him illegitimate, that he stole the election. We know how that goes. We've experienced it for the past 4 years. Surely the Biden people don't want that. And if they don't, and if they know, as they say, everything was above board, well, let's make this as transparent as necessary. Let's verify all those signatures. Let's count all those ballots again. Let's audit everything. They have nothing to lose because they've told us they won fair and square.
Patrick, again, fabulous points. I completely agree. Tell our audience where they can find more from you, follow your work.
Democracyinstitute.org is the best place.
Are you on any social media platforms, Patrick?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay, we've got to get you on Parler. We've got to get you some other platforms as well, because that is those nuggets are solid gold, and we want to make sure that we get more of an audience to your work. Patrick Basham, Democracy Institute, thank you once again for joining us here on the National Pulse.
My great pleasure, Raheem.
And go to the Democracy Institute website, support Patrick and his work, read that article from The Spectator, share it around, show your friends, share it into all the different groups you're a part of on social media. Action is the key word for this show. We want to make sure that you're taking every single action possible to secure the Trump 2020 victory, because it was one. We'll talk about that more after the break. Welcome back to the National Pulse. There are a lot of questions out there nowadays from people who follow this show, watch Real America's Voice, listen to the War Room, and consume the news as it should be reported, which is to say the truth. And I wanted to take some time out this afternoon to specifically address the questions of a particular audience that gets thousands upon thousands of people flocking to the site every day. The website is thedonald.win. It's called all sorts of crazy names by the establishment media. So I think cyber criminals was the last one. That was Fox News, I think, an article there. It's basically a Reddit, for those of you that don't know what that is, a thread, a forum where people can share ideas, share articles, etc., etc. And we are doing an effective AMA, an Ask Me Anything, with that website this afternoon here on the show. So I want to get cracking. These questions have been submitted over the course of this morning in the early afternoon, and we've gone through. I think we went through all of them, in fact, and picked out as many of the ones that weren't overlapping, that were safe for television. And so if you hear me replacing, if you're one of the people in the Donald who's put your question in, and you hear me reading out your question and it isn't verbatim, it's probably because it's not safe for air on a family show. So we've edited it slightly to be safe for air. But we wanted to answer your questions, so rather than ignore them. So let's get cracking. Number one, do you support the idea of Trump crossing the Rubicon and invoking the Insurrection Act? And that's a question from Cuz America. Now, I'm answering these questions without having pre-formulated answers. I just saw them in the last hour, and I'm answering them off the top of my head. The answer to that question, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the Insurrection Act, I think he should have used the Insurrection Act long ago. I tweeted it multiple times. I think I did an article about it at some point over the summer when all of this was taking place. And the reason I did, and the reason that I believed it to be the case, and it's still the case, is that the forces that were aligning against the president over the course of this summer, and I said this, it was very clear that they were in warm-up mode. They were in practice mode for what they would try to do if they didn't see their fraud work out, or if their fraud was caught in advance. If Joe Biden's attempts to rig this election hadn't reached where they have reached now, which is, the establishment media calling him the president-elect. So they had their riots and they had their mask mandates, they're shutting down businesses. That was all an attempt for a trial run. And the president of the United States, I think, should have shut it down with prejudice very quickly. I was very impressed by what took place in Lafayette Square, and whether or not you think that it's fine for the federal government or government officials to be using tear gas or whatever was used there in Lafayette Square to clear the park. I did think it was right. I mean, remember, this was a siege that they were promising and that they were attempting on the White House, on the President of the United States, on the legitimate, democratically elected government of the United States. And I think that he got some bad advice, honestly. I don't think that he saw that through enough to put down those riots, to put down those protests. I mean, you look back through even recent American history, and different presidents have dealt with a much firmer hand with riots and occupations of federal property. And I understand that, they would have said orange man bad, dictator, whatever. They say it anyway. So the answer to your question is yes. I think he should use every weapon in his arsenal right now to make sure that the rule of law is upheld in the United States. If Bill Barr doesn't want to do it, replace him. He should have been replacing the FBI director a long time ago, quite frankly. All right, question 2. I hope that answers your question. Question 2. Raheem, thanks for all you do. Would you please discuss the executive order that President Trump had signed in 2018 in regard to election fraud and what effect it actually has in the process we are going through right now? How does it help us, and what should we expect to see? And that question is from Dang. Yeah, I've been through this executive order. I know the ones that's been floating around. A lot of people are kind of saying, oh, you know, this is it, trust the plan. He saw this all coming. The white hats are coming. I never think like that. Even if it's true, I never think like that. I always think that it's my job and it's your job as citizens to put your shoulder to the wheel and be as effective as you can, no matter where the cavalry is. You don't stop fighting on the battlefield just because you can see the cavalry coming up behind you in the distance. You keep fighting. And so you go through this executive order, and it sticks out to me that, number one, I think a lot of people think that when the president signs an executive order, that means something's happening. That doesn't mean anything's happening. Remember, executive orders are not legislation. It doesn't necessarily change the playing field of what's taking place in terms of the law of the country. What it does is and this was the same thing about the social media executive order. It's kind of a, hey, we're looking at it. Hey, we got a bigger focus on it. We're going to be dedicating these resources to it. They are predicated on existing law. And if you look at the last paragraph of this executive order, it says, quote, this order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law, or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, entities, officers, employees, agents, or any other person. So effectively, how that reads to me is we have a commitment to uphold election law as we know it, as we have it. And by the way, that's enough. By the way, the Constitution of the United States is enough. You don't need a further order. You don't need a further commitment. These things are there, procedural and optical things for you to be like, hey, okay, he's doing something. They're dedicating resources to it. Fine. I'm all for that. But the rule of law has to be upheld in the shape and form of where it originates. And that is the Constitution of the United States. So you don't need to think about these things. I suppose the question is, the subtext of the question is, does this mean he was ahead of the curve on it? Probably. In his own mind, certainly. He knew what tricks that they had played on him. He knew how badly they had treated him, his family. He knew how the Republican Party had treated him, let alone the FBI, in conjunction with foreign partners, Christopher Steele, et cetera, et cetera. So surely, in the president's mind, yes. But does that mean that all of his agents of government, even the people in the White House around him, are supporting him in doing this, in tackling this? Absolutely not. All right, we go up against the break here. Going to get to more of your questions shortly. This is the National Pulse, thenationalpulse.com, answering questions from the Donald.win. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. We're answering questions from the Donald.win. There's obviously a lot of breaking news going on right now. Linwood, Sidney Powell giving their barnstormer of a rally today as well. Lots more this evening. Also, I want to make sure you stick around here on Real America's Voice. We'll be bringing you all the news as we get it. Rudy Giuliani, there's more out of Georgia tomorrow, more hearings, more evidence coming forward. The Amistad Project has more. Phil Klein has more. We'll be speaking to them on the show. We actually have some breaking news that we're working on getting to you exclusively for the National Pulse audience. Head on over to thenationalpulse.com. Coming out of the Election Integrity Project. They're the good guys out in Nevada and California who've been looking into this for years and years and years and are coming up with more and more evidence. Just want to bring some breaking news here in this hour as well. More from the CNN leaks, more from James O'Keefe, more from Project Veritas. I want to play this new clip that we have that's broken in the last few minutes here. Can we roll that?
The Hunter Biden story was an explosive blow against Joe Biden leading up to the presidential election. But listen on this 9 a.m. editorial conference call at CNN how President Jeff Zucker chooses to not cover this important story.
I think on the Breitbart, New York Post, Fox News rabbit hole of Hunter Biden, which I don't think anybody outside of that world understood last night, the Wall Street Journal reported that their review of all corporate records showed no role for Joe Biden on the Chinese deal. And yes, I do put more credibility in the Wall Street Journal than I do in the New York Post.
Obviously, we're not going with the New York Post story right now on Hunter Biden, and which seems to be giving its marching orders to Fox News and the right-wing echo chamber about what to talk about today. Obviously, Hunter Biden's lawyer is quoted in that New York Post piece, and we'll just continue to report out. This is the very stuff that the president was impeached over. This is the stuff that Senate committees looked at and found nothing wrong in Joe Biden's interactions with Ukrainians, and now having an email that perhaps there was a meeting with someone from Burisma is, it seems, Rudy Giuliani's sort of dream-a-vision of how to throw stuff at the wall in these closing days of the campaign.
Hey, Jeff, it's just David on the Burisma story, and we should be awfully careful about that, obviously. But I do think there's a media story of what in the world are Maggie Haberman and Jake Sherman doing, retweeting that story.
Woo! Okay, I had not seen that video before we played it. That's fresh. It's fresh to my eyes. It is to yours. So they don't think the Hunter Biden laptop was a story. By the way, have you noticed that all denials that it wasn't real, they've just gone away now? People know it's real. I've shown it to left-wing reporters. They've confirmed to me that, okay, yeah, this is real, but we can't report this. Our editors will never let us report it. And now you're hearing, thanks to Project Veritas, why? Hey, don't worry, obviously, he says, obviously we're not going to be covering it. Obviously. But then he says, I think there's a media story in here. What's Maggie Haberman doing? What's Jake Sherman doing? Retweeting the story. Well, you know, maybe they've still got a small, tiny, minuscule amount of reporting in their blood. I don't know. Maybe they think the public should be allowed to decide for themselves as grown-ups. Not often I defend Maggie Haberman, but hey, maybe for a second, that one little retweet. But this is what they want to do, a media story, but not a story. Not a story on the story, but a media story about the story. This is CNN. All right, I want to get back to your questions from the Donald.win here. We'll bring you more breaking news as we get it. Question number 3. Does Steve Bannon own a shirt that isn't black? P.S. Love the show. Don't ever change. That's from Senalab. Yes, in fact, he owns, I believe, one shirt that isn't black. No, I have over the years seen him wearing lots of different things, but there is a uniform for all of us in the war room. I dress like this. Jack Maxey, well, you know. And, Vish with his baseball hats, and Steve has the black shirt and the battle jacket and the 3 undershirts and the pens and all of that. I like the light-hearted questions. Question 4. Do you really think people will continue to play this rigged game if the steal happens? I see people trying to get people to vote on the 5th. Are they stupid, or do they think we are? That's from Mintscape. I'm incredibly torn about this because I totally see it from your perspective, Mintscape. Think about it this way. I'm the guy who, all of my friends were Tories, right? Conservative Party members in the United Kingdom. And maybe I was the second in my sort of 50, 60 person friendship / work group in Westminster in British politics who said, I'm done with the Conservative Party, I'm going to the UK Independence Party. People laughed. In fact, I remember one of them, a chap called Mark Clark, who's no longer relevant, who said that I would be irrelevant. He prodded his fingers into my chest, screaming obscenities at me outside late night at a bar outside the Conservative Party conference years and years ago, said, you are going to lose any semblance of credibility, you are finished, etc. Well, just go and look at where Mark Clark is now. Type in the words Tatler Tory, you'll find out everything you need to know. Let me get that question up again. I want to make sure I address it in full. I think there is obviously a case to be made to say, hey, you withdraw consent. If you don't see it as legitimate, you withdraw consent. But at the same time, you withdraw consent in Georgia, in the specials, you're done. In 100 days, you're done. In 100 days, barring the Supreme Court, and by the way, they'll pack the Supreme Court anyway, President Trump may well have no longer existed, may well as not have existed, rather. They'll undo every single thing, and China will own this nation. So you see how difficult it is. I don't think. You said, are they stupid or do they think you are? I don't think any of these things. You can have a difference of opinion. You can feel that duality, that dichotomy, without feeling that somebody's stupid or that you are. All right, question 5 is, based on current lawsuits, including those filed this week, what kind of a timeline are we looking at? When might we see some of these cases hitting the Supreme Court? Look, I've got 30 seconds left in this segment here before we go to break, and it's a perfect amount of time to answer this question. It goes a little something like this. On some of these issues, our guess is as good as yours. We get all sorts of different info, and we aggregate that info, but, with ideas such as, a question such as, when do these hit the Supreme Court? It's up to the Supreme Court. That's why Ted Cruz's intervention, and I'm no Ted Cruz fan, or at least haven't been a big supporter of some of the things that he's done over the last 4 or 5 years. He came in with a cruise missile last night. All right, more questions from you guys and more breaking news after the break. When I wake up in the morning, one of the first things I do is go to the UK news cycle and all the different ways that I follow the UK news cycle, because it's crazy town. Every single day is crazy town. You just look at some of the scenes. We're going to be publishing some of the video from London over the last week or so in the anti-lockdown protests. It's absolute crazy town. And I want people to understand that when we put up stories like the one I'm about to read you, it's kind of to give you an idea of actually just how lucky you guys still are here. I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but you look across Europe. You know, look at what's going on in Australia. Look at what's you ever find that when you say Australia, you say it with an Australian accent. Meghan Markle's husband, that's how we refer to him now, or Harry Markle. Okay, I refuse, and actually I have an editor's note at the bottom of this story. The National Pulse has taken the editorial decision not to refer to Harry Windsor or Harry Markle by his reputed title, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. He says that the Chinese Communist Party's virus, otherwise known as COVID-19, was a punishment from Mother Nature. They are religious about this, about climate change. It's absolutely nuts. And Harry Markle is unfortunately just a completely lost cause. I want to make sure you're checking out all the news over at thenationalpulse.com. In this hour, we're answering questions from the Donald.win. So let's jump straight back into the questions from MAGA supporters all over the world. Question 6. Hey, Raheem, who would you like to see follow up Trump's second term? That's from Concealed Aces. I guess the question is who's next? Who's after Trump in 2024? Once this election is delivered on the legal votes for President Trump, you know, I struggle with it because I live every day with people saying, oh, you know, it's going to be Don Jr., it's going to be Tucker Carlson, it's going to be, you know, Kristi Noem, Tom Cotton. Yeah, it could be all of those people. It could be any one of those people. All fine. I got a different idea. I'm going to throw it out there. I know it's a little bit out there. And you might say, oh, you know, he's very smart, but does he have the gravitas? I don't know, we'll see. I like Peter Navarro. And I think you will need somebody like Peter Navarro to take on what you know is going to be obviously an increased assault on the country by the Chinese Communist Party across another 4 years of a Trump presidency. And hey, on the outside chance that it's a Biden presidency, the CCP is going to be welcomed in. The red carpet's going to be rolled out. And there's just nobody better than on that issue than Peter Navarro. So, you know, call me nuts. I don't know. Number 7. With regards to the UK, when do you believe a full Brexit will be achieved, if at all, at this point? Also, do you believe the pendulum will swing back from globalism of the West, especially the UK, and nationalism will gain rapid popularity, since nationalism and conservatism are the new punk movement? That's from Spooky Spooky. I don't think we'll get a full Brexit anytime soon. It looks like we'll be settling for half measures. If you follow the detail of Britain's exit from the European Union, our immigration system as we had planned it, as what the public voted for during Brexit, isn't the one that we're getting now, and the government targets and the points-based systems and all these silly things that they've been dancing around. The public wanted a stop, right? The public was sick of 600,000 gross immigration to the United Kingdom. That's the size of a medium-sized city immigrating into the country every year. Strain on resources, on the National Health Service, on transport, on crowding, on housing, all of it. They wanted to stop. Zero. It's happened recently, in the 1980s. We had a net zero migration. That's what they wanted, not these bloody targets, which is still delivering, net migration at 250,000 people a year. In terms of nationalism, conservatism being the new punk movement, I would love that to be the case, but I think you're living a little bit in a bubble if you think the rest of the world sees it that way. Certainly, I believe they have the ability to be that way, but you have to have firstly ethos, and then you have to have branding around things like that. We don't have those things yet. One of the reasons I focus so much on aesthetics on the National Pulse website, go to it. It's the best looking conservative website out there. is because, and why do I dress like this? Why do we focus in on making sure that everything is crisp and clean and beautiful and packaged up? Because, and you know, here's the deal. As soon as you go to the National Pulse website, Natalie Winters has just put up a new story, and she's put the wrong image in. So, disproving my point that it's the best looking. Natalie, if you're watching, can you fix that, please? But it's framed like that because you have to make sure that you're not just attractive because of your philosophy and because of what you believe and that it's the most appealing to people. It is, I agree with you. Conservatism, nationalism has the most incredible answers to the problems we face, the generational problems that we're going to face. Read Roger Scruton on the importance of the aesthetic argument as well. It's imperative to what we're doing. Number 8, are we starting to piece together that there is interference in our movement from within, from subversive groups posing as patriotic Americans offering false hope of plans and mechanisms of victory and distracting us with ridiculous conspiracy theories and wild espionage fantasies to pacify real patriots with a false sense of clandestine action being taken by our side secretly? And that's from Sting. I don't know if you heard my rant about it on the War Room yesterday, Sting, but that's exactly what I said. All these people who are telling you that you're fine to sit at home with your feet up, with your, just typing away all day, tweeting away all day, those are the people who want you not to get involved, who want you not running for office, who want you not organizing protests, who want you not out there doing things, putting actual pressure on your legislators, real things that make real change. Sitting back, and I'm sorry, I know I'm going to get stick for this, but I'm sorry, sitting back and saying trust the plan is not an answer. Always remember, and no disrespect at all, always remember, just because you can see the cavalry, it doesn't mean you stop fighting. Question number 9 from QAnon 17 is, who is Raheem Kassam? Well, it's a fine question for people that haven't heard of me and you're just tuning in for the first time from the Donald.win. I suppose I am a reporter, a news anchor, a podcast host, a political, I've been an activist in my time. I've been Nigel Farage's former senior advisor on the run-up to the Brexit. The largest ever vote share that the UK Independence Party got was in 2015 when I was in charge of Nigel's operation there. I've written a couple of books. I see we're up against the clock. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, in the break, I am glad to tell you I fixed the image issue on the homepage of the National Pulse since I was crowing about how beautiful the site is. Natalie Winters was rushing to. You got to reload it, guys. Natalie Winters, there you go, nice and crisp and clean and clear. A nice CNN logo in there. If you open the story up there, nice CNN logo in there with the Chinese Communist Party flag there. I'll obviously fix the cropping once I'm off the air. I've got to do everything, guys. I have to do everything. Natalie Winters is rushing to get that story up. You want to check that out on the National Pulse website. That is CNN. It's the latest leak from James O'Keefe on CNN, on Jeff Zucker, on how they approached Hunter Biden's hard drive, getting a ton of traffic to the National Pulse website right now. And I thank everybody who's going there. Let's move on to some of your questions. Got to cover a lot more in this hour. Number 10. What happens if you don't get any relief and if we don't get any relief and Biden gets inserted, if you will? And that's from Farmer X 2000. God, what do you think happens? I mean, there are loads of different things that can happen in that scenario. Do you have another? And we're answering questions from the Donald.win this is an Ask Me Anything kind of thing that we're doing live. And I know it's kind of different for this show, but we thought we'd try and mix it up for you. What happens if you don't get any relief? Firstly, I don't think you should ever stop trying to get relief. It's very clear to me. I've studied enough elections. I've studied their playbooks enough. I went through, you saw this. If you watched this show before, back in October, we went through the Ballot Battles book that they were predicating a lot of their fraud or their notions of fraud on the Transition Integrity Project. We broke that news here on this show. We talked about how Facebook was limiting using these just extraordinary organizations that are total phonies and fakes based out in Brussels to fact check. Thanks for the big lots of scrolling teleprompter in front of me. Producer David, calm down. We'll get to all the questions. There are lots of avenues that you can pursue for this. People are asking if there's going to be another party, if there needs to be another party. The Republicans have their fight in them. Enough fight in them. Should we even be trusting these people? You saw, I mean, if you didn't see, you will see, and you should see what took place there today with Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell. People are apoplectic. It's just the Godfather quote that I gave this morning on the War Room. These things have to happen every 5-10 years or so. It's a bloodletting. It's like the Tea Party. It's a figurative, by the way. It's like the Tea Party. You've got to kick the bums out. 11. When is the absolute deadline for the lawsuits in SCOTUS? Let's say the constitutional lawsuit in Pennsylvania throws out enough ballots to flip to Trump, but the electors have already been convened on the 14th. What happens then? That's from 2018 Executive Order is the name of the account. So as far as I did put some notes down about this just as I saw that question for the first time about an hour ago, 2 hours ago. I did put some notes down just very quickly here in front of me. So December the 23rd deadline is important because that's when Mike Pence, as the Senate, as presiding at the Senate, says to everybody, hey, if you haven't got your results in, you've got to get them in now. And that's his statutory duty to do that. But then, regardless as to whether or not that has happened or it doesn't happen, there are then two theories on this, right? And number one is that the courts have to deal with it, and that the courts have to figure out a way to certify this and go through everything and verify everything. And that could be at multiple different levels, and that would be just a hell of a messy fight. And the second one is that it gets kicked to the new Congress, to the incoming Congress, and specifically to the state delegations of the incoming Congress, which favors Republicans. But again, what does that mean when we know how weak and wishy-washy so many of these GOP establishment types are? So that's kind of where the next couple of weeks will take us. After that, and I know there's a lot of questions about after that, you're in uncharted territory. You get to mid-January, or you get after an inauguration, and enough evidence starts to come up. Never happened before. You're in totally uncharted territory. A real test of the Constitution there. Real test of the Republic itself. A republic, remember, if you can keep it. And this is one of those moments where that Benjamin Franklin quip will be tested. 12. Question 12. Raheem, often Bannon calls on the president to declassify more information. The only reason I can see he doesn't do this is that it implicates several Republican senators in states that have Democratic governors. What say you? Secondly, why does the president seem so slow in firing bad actors? That's from Better Living Linux. I don't think he's protecting Republican senators. I've seen no evidence of that. In terms of why he's so slow, people won't like to hear it. Got bad advisors, lots of them, who give him bad advice, lots of it. That's all there is to it. It's a fact. It's an open secret here in Washington, D.C., in MAGA circles that, hey, we've got to get past this guy and then this guy. Shouldn't be like that, of course, for people who've been fighting the president's corner and fighting the America First corner and fighting the nationalism corner for so very long. But it is. Question 13. Going to rip through as many of these as possible. Why is it that Republicans would fight for Democrats' rights to be free and fair, for a free and fair election if it was evidence that POTUS was cheating through Dominion, yet the left is unwilling to do the same for us? The name of the account was something along the lines of My Richard Screamed. Why? Because the left is a blob. It's a blob and it broadly sticks together. Yeah, okay, they go at each other from time to time, but they broadly stick together. The right kind of just pulls in all different directions. There's no central authority. There's no central kind of planning to all of this. And the people who are supposed to be doing that are horrible and not inspirational at all, like, the RNC. That's the most basic answer to the question I can give. It's a much longer question, a much longer answer than that. I want to get to more if we can by the end of this show. Question 14, what do you feel is the right course of action considering our right to vote, bear arms, and our right to free speech is being attacked? If Trump is unable to win through the judicial system, what should we be willing to do as citizens or prepared to do as citizens? That's from Solar24. I just want to read from Thomas Paine's The Crisis. Quote, my own line of reasoning is to myself as straight and clear as a ray of light. Not for all the treasures in the world, so far as I believe, could it induce me to support an offensive war, for I think it is murder. But if a thief breaks into my house, burns down my property, and kills or threatens to kill me, or those that are in it, and to bind me in all cases whatsoever to his absolute will, am I to suffer it? I think somebody replied to you, by the way, on that question in the Donald.win. That's a question that you need to answer for yourself, within yourself. All right, we got to as many as possible on this. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. We're going to do this again soon. National Pulse returns tomorrow. Stick around. David Brody in the water cooler. And I want to thank the Donald.win for participating in this Ask Me Anything Live. Cheers. See you tomorrow.